now, with all this information, we should stop talking about Northeast in terms of separatist ideologies and start recognizing for who they are.
Yes.
And the battles that they fought, not just of the freedom movement, but against conversions, isolated or independent, individual, collective, doesn't matter, but they still fought.
Yes.
And to this day, there are so many surviving Hindu pockets.
Yes.
I don't know about the exact percentage in hills and plains, but I would say there still exist a lot of Hindu pockets, which goes to say that they did survive the onslaught of other missionaries.
Yes.
So that's what.
Yeah, I'll give you one example. For long, we used to believe that Mizoram was a 100% Christian state.
Mm.
But when we started going into Mizoram and started meeting people, we found that there were 2,000 Mizos who practiced the religion of their forefathers. They have not become converts. They have an organization called Mizo Sakua, unknown to the world. The rest of the world doesn't know that. For them, Mizoram is a Christian state. There are 2,000 people in Mizoram, and there are about.
State, right?
It's a small state of few lakhs,
Mm-hmm.
not even 10 lakhs, less than that, not even a million, less than that. But there are 2,000 people who are practicing the religion of their forefathers.
Is this the latest figure?
This is the latest
You
figure.
went back in
2018,
right?
yes. And then there are about 20,000 Riyangs who are practicing Vaishnava Dharma in Mizoram.
Mm.
They have refused to become Christians. For their refusal to accept Christianity, they have been driven away from the state. They are now living as refugees in neighboring Tripura for the last 30 years.
Mm.
This is a saga that the world doesn't know.
Doesn't know, yes.
For last 30 years, they have been driven away from their homes for the simple reason that they wanted to preserve the religion of their forefathers. They have been thrown out.
When we talk about the displacing of Kashmiri
Pandits, but nobody talks about Liangs. The precondition is protection of, they wanted to preserve their religion. So they came back, they came to Tripura as refugees. They preferred a life of refugee rather than going back to Mizoram and,
who ordered their excommunication? Who ordered their expulsion?
Usually the government doesn't do.
Mm.
Government sits as a mute spectator, but the hordes of people who are incited by the church organizations, they attack the people. The moment a Riyang becomes a Christian, he is given a Mizo name. His name changes.
Mm.
His name will not be a Riyang tribal name. His name will become a Mizo tribal name. This is a fact. And it is to protect their language, their culture, their religion that they have become refugees in Tripura. Almost 30 to 40,000 Chakmas who practice Buddhism are now endangered in Mizoram. Of course, there is an autonomous district for them where the administration is in their hands, but the Mijos, but the Chakmas are a vulnerable group. Chakmas are Buddhists. So, to protect, practice, and preserve your religion, you have to brave a lot of things. Even now. So I am talking about the Mizo Sakua, the group that still remained original Mizo. They are known as Mizo Sakua. There are 2,000 of them.
Mm.
There is a big problem there as far Northeast is concerned. The administration is in the hands of the Christians, church. The schools are run by them. The census hospitals are run by them. The census officials, they are the census officials. So what they record, the details that they record, they may not be known to the actual population. So the census, voters lists, everything is in their hands. So this is the way they are actually manipulating.
This needs to be brought into the mainstream dialogue, mainstream conversations. So that makes me ask, what are the kind of organizations on the ground working for their cause? The non-Christian organizations.
Non-Christian organizations. That's again a very good question because there are a lot of organizations working for the preservation of the indigenous faith. For instance, I will just read out the names of the organizations. You will be surprised. Even among the remotest tribals, there are organizations which are fighting for the preservation of the indigenous culture.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that is unknown to the rest of the world. For instance, in Nagaland, there is a Jiliangrang Haraka Association. There are 3 tribes. Ziliangrong tribes. They practice a religion which is known as Haraka, Harakka. Haraka means pure. So what is impure is a matter of conjecture for you. So they consider themselves to be pure. They have their own temples which are known as Kelumkai. Kelumki. Kelumkai. They are prayer halls. The people meet at an appointed time on an appointed date, and they chant whatever mantras they know in the Naga Jiliangrang language. They fast on Purnima. They fast on Amavasya day, full moon and the no moon day. So this Haraka movement is very popular in the Jiliangrang area. Same way, you have an organization among the Angami Naga community. Angami Nagas again are a powerful Naga community, majority Christianized, but there are still some people who have refused to become Christians. There are 4 major Naga groups: Ao, Sema, Angami, Lotha. There are 14 groups, but these 4 are economically, politically, education-wise very powerful communities, sub-communities of Nagas. So the Angami Nagas have an association of their own to preserve their indigenous faith. The name of the organization is quite a tongue twister. Jafo Fiki Kruna Keseko Keho. This is the name of the organization which is fighting to preserve the indigenous faith of the Angamis, pre-Christian faith. Same way, there is a tribe called Chakesan. This is one of the minor tribes of Nagas. The organization is known as Chakesan Likeri Lenu Kejomi Mapau. This is the name of the organization. They fight for the original faith of the tribals. Same way, you have a lot of organizations. Mizo Sakua I already spoke about. Senkhasi I already spoke about. There are different tribes like Karbi tribes. There are 2 organizations among the Karbis. One of them is very interesting. The name of the first organization is Hempu Mukrang Adarbar. The second one is known as Lakshman Sangha. They pronounce it as Lachimon Sangha. So Lachimon Sangha is, the Karbis believe that they are the descendants of Vali and Sugriva. So the name of the organization is Lakshman Sangha or Lachimon Sangha. Karbis have their own Ramayana. It is known as Sabi Alun. Sabi is Karbi name for Sita, goddess Sita. Usually across the country it is the story of Rama. Ramayana means story of Rama. But in the Karbi Anglang it is the story of Sita. The Karbis are more feminists than the feminists themselves. The Ramayana itself is told from the Sita's point of view. So they have their own Ramayana. Mijos had their own Ramayana. For instance, you will be surprised to know, Mijo Ramayana, the Ravana is only 4-headed. Across the country it is 10-headed. But the Mijo Ramayana, today there is no memory of this Ramayana. You know where this whole Mijo Ramayana is preserved? It is preserved in the archives of London. A British officer by name P. Shakespeare visited, recorded this, wrote this whole thing down, translated it, and took it to UK, Britain, and then it is still preserved. One professor a Christian professor from Mizoram, Aizawl, Professor Lal Ruanga, he went to England and he chanced upon this text, and he brought back and he told the Mizo people that we used to have a Ramayana at one point in time. So memories are lost basically because the whole community is converted. So a lot of such organizations are there. In 1966, the first attempt to reach out to these tribals has happened. Because in the
tribals or tribal organizations, these organizations?
Both tribal organizations that are working for the community. In fact, so long as we don't go to these regions, there is no way we know about these organizations. Because of the inner line and the psychological barriers between the rest of the Hindu society and the tribal society, people were not even aware of these movements going on. It so happened that in 1966, the first Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the conference was held in Assam. Some 12 tribals groups were represented in this meeting. They came from Garo areas of Meghalaya, Khasi areas of Meghalaya, and then there are some other tribes. Some 12 tribes they came. Then this whole discussion happened, and Gradually, an interface was developed between these tribal groups as well as these people. Understand, first the problem was to bring these tribals together. These 12 tribals were brought together, they had their own conferences, they thrashed out their issues, and then they started making common cause and working together. So the tribal leaders from Rabha area went to the Garo area, and the Garo leaders went to the Khasi area. So a common bonding was established. This was in the early 70s and 80s. Now, because of the support that they are getting, there are about 79 tribes, 72 tribes to be precise, which are in contact with Hindu organizations. So during these discussions, two or three things emerged. The first one was that this fight must not be this battle must not be fought in isolation. All these communities should get together and fight for indigenous, faith systems, for the preservation of indigenous faith. So they have tribal indigenous faith protection forums have been formed in Northeast, where the different tribes get together and try to find out ways and means to oppose the allurements, fraud, so on and so forth. And one of the biggest challenges is to preserve its own culture, the tribal culture. So the older generation started teaching to the newer generation. For instance, archery is the national game of the Khasi people. After they became Christianized, archery was completely lost. Singh Khasi started popularizing archery, and then it demanded the Meghalaya government to declare one particular day as the National Archery Day and declare a holiday on that.
You mean state archery?
State archery. They called it national,
Okay.
but then it is implemented only in Meghalaya.
Okay.
So Meghalaya government announces a holiday on the archery day. And the Khasis, regardless of whether they are Hindus or Christians or natives or whatever, they all participate in the archery games and they are coming together. They are trying to explore their lost heritage.
Mhm.
So that way a lot of organizations are working, and now there is some support from organizations like RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, Vanvasi Kalyanashram, and lot of other organizations which are actually going deep into the states like Nagaland, Manipur, Meghalaya,
That's really
and even
encouraging.
Mizoram, and they're trying to meet these people. It is during one such exploratory tour that the Mizo Sakua were identified.
Mhm.
Till then, our understanding was that Mizoram was a 100% Christian state, save the Riyangs and Chakmas.
Mhm.
But even among the Mizos, they were Christian, they're non-Christians. It became known only during such exploratory tours. The Angami organization came to light only when the people went in and tried to explore.
That's really encouraging. So, how is the church faring these days?
Church is facing two or three major challenges. The first major challenge for them is the conversion graph has plateaued. That's the first problem. Because they have reached a plateau kind of situation, a majority of the people have got converted. There are no neo converts in various churches. So there is a kind of plateauing. And a natural corollary of plateauing is dissensions within the community.
Mhm.
And when newer groups of Christians, Christian organizations start coming to Northeast, there is always this issue of sheep stealing.
Mhm.
So there are 100 Christians, I steal about 4 or 5 and form a church of my own. And somebody else comes and he again takes one from my side and one from the other group, and then he forms another church. This is the biggest problem. Sheep stealing is the biggest problem in Northeast today because there are no more Christians
I like
to be
the
made.
word sheep stealing.
That's the word church uses.
Mhm.
That's the word Pope used.
Okay.
Pope said, Pope called these sheep stealers. He used a very interesting word, rapacious wolves, hungry wolves.
Mhm.
Pope called the non-Catholics who are trying to lure Catholics into their fold as rapacious wolves. This is the word he used. And this word sheep stealing is part of the Christian lexicon. Because after all, their boss is a shepherd.
Shepherd, yes.
So sheep stealing is a major issue all across the tribal communities in northeastern part of the country, because there are no more Christians to be made. So there is interdenominational tussle. And the third major problem that they are facing is about the sprouting of new churches which are not associated with any major denomination, international denomination. Individual tribal Christian gets a dream or gets a vision, and he feels there are some tribal elements that need to be incorporated into the uh, practice of Christianity. He feels that these elements should be made part of the Christianity. When the church refuses, he incorporates those elements and he starts his own church. So all those so-called animalistic practices like hysteric crying, and then singing, community dancing, and then chanting of mantras in the local tribal language, they are coming back. They are now challenging the mainstream churches which have international linkages. So this is the third major challenge that they are facing. The fourth big problem is the behavior of the pastors. If you read Nagaland Post, which is a daily that gets published from Kohima, you would find that every day there are a couple of letters written to the editor criticizing the way the pastors are pandering to the interests of the rich Christians, ignoring the needs of the poor Christians. There are letters every day. The reason is the pastors go to the person who gives them the biggest contribution, higher contribution. So this is one issue, and there is a lot of discontent over the way the church representatives of the church are behaving with the lower strata of the society, Naga community. So there's a lot of discontent.
So much for their message about being equal.
Equal. So this is one major problem, and the last issue that I find that the Christianity is plagued in Northeast is it is unable to address the spiritual needs of the Naga, the tribal communities. For that, not just Nagas, every community.
In fact, across the world.
Across the world.
Has nothing in its message that can actually fulfill a person's spiritual quest.
So since the spiritual needs are not addressed, the people are becoming inactive Christians. They are Christians, but there is no alternative for them. Hinduism has been demonized. So they think of organizations, Hindu organizations as villains. So they don't go anywhere, but they become inactive Christians, passive Christians, so to say. So this is one major problem that as a result of lack of spiritual enrichment, drugs is a major problem among the youth of Northeast, mostly among the Christian youth. AIDS, the cases of AIDS among the tribal communities is very large, alarmingly high.
AIDS among Christian tribals or non-Christian tribals?
It's very
because they don't cease to be tribals even after their conversion. That's what we've already discussed.
Yeah. Well, the rampant spread of AIDS and drug abuse is not just limited to Christian tribals. It's a general problem that afflicts all sections of the society. Even Manipur, which is predominantly Hindu, has this problem. There's no denying of that fact. There are a lot of AIDS cases also in Manipur. But then Christianity has failed to address these issues as a superior, so-called, which claims as a religion which is claims to be a superior one, has not succeeded in addressing this. So there are rampant incidents of drug abuse among the practitioners, and there are incidents of some religious personalities also getting involved in drug abuse, and drug is a major problem in Northeast. So these are the 5 or 6 major issues that the Christian religion is grappling with. And then the plateauing of the conversion graph is mainly to do with the activities of these organizations and their association with the nationalist organizations elsewhere. So this has added a new challenge to the church, and there are many places where there are, conversions have stopped, and there are reconversions. For instance, lot of Haraka, a lot of Zeliangrang Christians have come back to the Haraka religion. There are reconversions even among the Senkhasis. There are reconversions even among the Bodo community. A lot of Bodos who have gone to Christianity have come back. So this is these 5 or 6 are the major challenges. They have an organizational setup, and the biggest problem for the Christian church in Northeast is they have failed to unify the diverse tribes. So numerically they may look very big, but when it comes to organizing huge rallies, so on and so forth, then each tribe has its own issues. So more often their fight is with the neighboring Kuki rather than with the Hindu of the Haflong area or some other area. So this is proving to be a hindrance for the. This is one major challenge that the Christianity is facing right now.
So, in the ongoing effort of reclaiming Northeast for, should I say, Mahabharati,
Yes.
for India, this is a very important discussion, interesting insights which are not discussed anywhere, not in any of those web magazines, or you barely get to see any news about Northeast, especially Christianity in Northeast, or of any of these organizations that are working tirelessly in isolated pockets to preserve their culture, their language, their basically their history. So I hope with this discussion there will be at least this conversation will come to the mainstream, and I'm presuming that more such discussions will be carried on, will be initiated, so as to reach out as the rest of the country to these areas.
Exactly.
So I hope these efforts come to some fruition, and this will be strengthened in the near future.
Okay, thank you so much.
So thank you so much for the insights. We will continue on this series and maybe try to get in some more detailed inside information. I know what you have given today is an overview, and looking at the time constraints, we were not able to go into details of, for example, what kind of strategies these organizations are employing. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in another episode. Until then, namaste.